I don't know about you. It's a bit chilly. I've just put the central heating on, and I'll probably be getting a scarf and a hat in a minute. Hello, everybody. I'm Russ Kane. This is Men's Radio Station, and this is, well, my favourite hour of the week, really. It is the ABC of CBD, sponsored, of course, by the Tincture Club and led by the inimitable hunk of hemp, the Count of Cannabinoids, Ollie Mammon. This is episode 43. And really, it's amazing. I can't ever believe we were going to get to 43 shows, and we've got loads, I mean dozens, all the way down the pike to bring you. Thank you so much. You can hear us, of course, on Twitter, on Facebook. You can also see us and hear us on our YouTube channel, which is Men's Radio Station YouTube channel. And if you had to dash off and have a relaxing pina colada or something like this in this fabulous heat, then you can catch us up anytime on the Men's Radio YouTube channel anytime. Let's dash up straight away to Edinburgh, where they're doing some sort of fringe. Veronica Curran, good evening, gents. Good evening to you, Veronica. This show goes live all over the world. I sent Ollie the stats only yesterday, and the countries this is going to is quite extraordinary. So wherever you're listening, whatever time of the day it is, wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day. I can't believe we're in London. It's about old money 91 plus degrees, or new money 32 or something like that for you crazy kids. Enough from me. I'm really just the passenger here.
He's talking about Fahrenheit and Celsius there, in case anyone had no idea what he's not talking about penny farthings and
penny farthings and threepenny bits, sixpennies, pennies, chains, perches, links, or anything else of the old measurements.
Question: were you around when sovereigns were actual currency?
Shut your face, Git. I've never liked you. I've tolerated you.
Do you not regret keeping those sovereigns, not taking the bus, and not having a load of gold right now?
I used to get paid in doubloons. So, you wouldn't even know what that is. I'm joking. I just made that up. That's pirate. Doubloons.
Okay. Like pieces of 8, right?
Could you shut up about this? Shut up about this. We've got a guest waiting in the digital green room.
And also, we've got to play the advert and shut us up.
I haven't introduced you yet. That... chaotic. It's the heat. It's got to him, and he's wearing a long sleeve shirt. What the hell's the matter with the man? Ladies and gentlemen, the inimitable Mr. Ollie Mammon.
So I'm boiling. Okay, Russ is freezing. I'm dying. I've got a new location. Quite fun.
I can see that. You look like you're in a lab or something.
We're filming from the lab, and I just thought, like, it's really cool because we can actually do infusions and stuff while we're on air, which is
that looks fantastic.
I feel like we might need to do this in a few weeks' time. Film from here, teach you guys to make all types of stuff. But we'll move on to that in the future, only because this is turned into a video show, which is pretty awesome. So for everyone who watches online, we can give you some awesome content. Anyway, Absolutely. Welcome to the ABC of CBD. Thank you to everyone who's joined us over the last 43 weeks. Thank you to every single one of our guests for making this, the go-to cannabis radio show podcast in the UK. I mean, we are the most viewed show, and that's thanks to the listeners and the guests. I mean, me and Russ are so thankful to you guys for giving us the ability for our show to be what we wanted it to be through you, all of you. So, I mean, thanks for making this great. We got an incredible guest today, a gentleman by the name of Matt Hughes. A lot of you know him. For those of you who don't know him, he is an absolute warrior. I'm going to make my introduction in a little bit, but let's just play a quick word from the sponsor, and then we're going to smash out the show. I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD. A product created by users for users. A product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price.
Marvelous.
Introduction. Should we do it?
Please, if you'd be so kind.
So, as we continue our chapter on childhood epilepsy and the benefits cannabis products can bring to these young termoid lives, we are joined by another amazing warrior parent, battling to obtain prescription funding for his child. However, Matt Hughes is not fighting a single serving battle. He's not only fighting for his child, he's fighting a battle for all those in need and all those who will be in need in the future. There has been a lot of media focus in the UK in recent weeks on the subject of cannabis and epilepsy, but it's almost like it's not sticking. People are not listening. People are not understanding the severity of this and how beneficial cannabis is to these vulnerable little souls. About 3 years ago, there was a similar media campaign, which resulted in a couple of patients receiving NHS prescriptions, Hannah Deacon's son being one of them. Yep. Since that time, not that much has changed. And as we have heard, access is still limited. Doctors are not playing the helping game. Prices are exorbitant. And I keep on saying things are not working properly. Things are not working as they should. Even with the stories that have emerged in recent weeks from Karen Gray and Ilmarie Thomas covering the media with their requests for help, generally media support is lacking. Telling a story is one thing, supporting a cause is something else. Yes, the media share stories, but support and that media edge, it's not there. This is across the board with most cannabis media. The media crusade of this green wave of cannabis taking the world by storm has stopped. Why? This has caused problems in converting people outside of the cannabis community to the importance of cannabis for epilepsy and for many other ailments. Whether they are medical professionals or just ordinary civilians, people are not registering the importance of this plant to the lives of people are not registering the importance of this plant to the lives of some of the most vulnerable and at-risk people in our country. No exaggeration. When it comes to epilepsy, this is life or death. This needs media focus. This needs more attention. Cannabis saves lives and improves the quality of life. Fact. Our guest today is a gentleman by the name of Matt Hughes. Matt has a 4-year-old son called Charlie, and Charlie has epilepsy. Since the age of 10 weeks old, yes, 10 weeks old, Charlie has suffered from countless seizures. Originally, he was diagnosed as having infantile spasms linked to epilepsy. Charlie was having up to 120 seizures a day.
A day?
As Matt is about to tell you. Exactly. It's like making me sweat when I talk about it. It's like literally makes me sweat when I hear it.
Poor little guy.
It's insane.
Awful.
Over the last 4 years, Charlie has tried countless pharmaceutical medications which zombified him, reduced his development, and basically gave him no life. Charlie then started trying CBD products, and Matt and his wife Ali saw changes instantly in their son. Charlie seemed happier. He had little smiles. In May 2019, Charlie got his private prescription, and Matt and Ali saw a side to their son that they had not previously seen. It gave a family hope. Okay, cannabis brought them that little bit of hope which they had never had before. Unfortunately, Charlie still has developmental delays, as Matt's going to tell us, but he is happy and he's enjoying life. Charlie has no negative side effects from the cannabis medication, and he has a better quality of life because of it. It means something to this kid. It means something to so many of these children, and it's important that we all tune into this because, why do they deserve to suffer? And that's what it's all about. It's all about giving these patients that little bit of happiness, giving these patients that little bit of relief. Matt is fighting this battle for future Charlies and future children in need who shouldn't have to suffer due to the lack of education in the medical system. Matt's organization, MedCan, offers support to parents and their children, providing education, direction, support, and much needed coping network to families who are left struggling with epilepsy. Matt is using the education and knowledge that he has been forced to accumulate to help others in his position. The MedCan team includes incredible people like Hannah Deacon and Callie Seaman, both of whom have graced us with their presence on the show. Callie did a few episodes right at the start. She was incredible, Dr. Callie Seaman, and Hannah Deacon was on a few weeks ago, and she literally just blew the doors off. She was unbelievable. And together, they're creating this organization because they've journeyed the hard way and they don't want other parents to kind of go through that the way they've had to go through that. So I really want all of us to give a very warm welcome to Matt, and I want us to show him the support, and I want us to show him the appreciation which he deserves and just the love which he deserves. So let's welcome on Matt.
Oh, hello.
Matt, thank you so much for joining us at Men's Radio. Really appreciate it. The guests that Ollie finds are quite extraordinary, and their stories rip you apart. So I'm just going to step back and listen and jump in as and when. But again, thank you for finding the time to join us on the ABC of CBD, because people like yourself, who, as Ollie was described as warriors, are so crucial to the understanding of the whole process. Ollie.
Amazing. Well, yeah, so thank you so much for joining us, Matt. If I left anything out of my introduction, like I said, feel free to throw it in. The heat has got to me today, so don't judge me. Okay.
Listening to it back. It's just hearing everything and kind of hearing it back gets the emotions going.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, man. It's just like I said, when you spoke to me a couple of days ago on the phone, I was literally like, by the end of the call, how livid was I? And I was like, speaking to you, I was like, dude, I'm so sorry, I'm this angry. It's just like, I feel it too. It's horrible. And as you saw,
can I just say, Matt, if you feel you're getting too emotional, or if you feel, we're going into areas that you're not comfortable about, this is Men's Radio, and my rule is very simple. Don't go there. Just say, I don't want to go. There's no problem whatsoever.
It's problem sometimes and hearing it back.
Well, you know what it is, Matt? It's a conversation. It's not an interview and it's not an interrogation. It's a conversation to educate people, and I'm in the front of the queue who want to get educated. And thanks to Ollie, I have been.
So, Matt, tell us a little bit about Charlie's journey with cannabis. Just give us a little bit of an insight as to what it's like to be a father of an epileptic child. I think it's quite a female-dominated space, so it's quite funny. We've had a lot of epileptic mothers come on, and I think it's quite cool to have an epileptic father. And it's just how's it been being involved in the space and the community, and how's Charlie been since getting cannabis in his life, and just give us a little bit of an insight into him.
Yeah, cool. So Charlie's doing okay. He's been really, really stable for the past 2 years. So with epilepsy, it's ever evolving. So because he had epilepsy at 10 weeks old, those developmental pathways that you produce, as the brain's developing, that was being interrupted by all the seizures and the medications and just everything. His brain wasn't developing in the normal way. So we got into a point, cutting a long story short, with all we looked at ketogenic diet and we tried that and brain surgery, etc. And once we started using cannabis, we got into a point where he was stable, the seizures have reduced significantly, but his quality of life. So we see it, me and Al, and his clinicians, to be fair, we see this as a balancing act between seizure control and quality of life. And it's unlikely we're ever going to get Charlie completely seizure-free. That is kind of the holy grail that we're always aiming for, but realistically, and without trying to build our hopes up too much, that's potentially unlikely. But we will try our best to get the best quality of life for him. So when we introduce new medications, and even with the cannabis, it's about quality of life versus seizure control. And for the past 2 years since he's been using cannabis, he's been doing really, really well. He's been very stable. His clinicians haven't wanted to change anything, and he's happy. He's enjoying life, and the seizures that he does have are not interfering in his life. They're very small, very quick, and he recovers from them more or less instantly. So there are days where he's not great, but as I say, it's ever evolving. So as he's getting older, he's diagnosed with infantile spasms, but it changes to Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, which is an adult kind of version of epilepsy. So very, very severe. But again,
sorry, Matt, could you say that again, because people like myself are not familiar with that? So give me that term again.
Lennox-Gastaut syndrome.
Okay.
I presume it's named after the doctor.
Presumably so. And just before you launch into the story, just as a bit of background, Matt, was there a family history of epilepsy, or was this completely out of the blue?
Yeah, completely out of the blue. So when Charlie was, I'd say 10 weeks old, he started having what it kind of looked like, it's a very rare condition. There's about 300 children each year born with infantile spasms in the UK. And it does get misdiagnosed quite often as colic. So it's usually after when he wakes up. And that's most common when you start seeing what's called spasms. But usually when you feed them as well. So that's why it's easy to get mixed up thinking it's gas or something like that. But we knew something wasn't right. We took him to A&E and they said, no, it's colic. It's, take him to the GP tomorrow. The following day, he was so upset, and he's literally bending over in two, and his arms were coming in. And we was like, yes, this isn't right. So we filmed it. I took him to the GP, and long story short, he ended up going into status by the time we got him into the hospital. He called the hospital up and said, look, Charlie's coming in instantly. He went into status, and he's in constant seizure. And then the doctors kind of turned around and said, this is epilepsy, he's having seizures. And at that point, we're still kind of numb to it. We kind of thought, my view of epilepsy was you just give them some tablets, they can crack on with life. So my niece and nephew are both type 1 diabetic. And I kind of saw it like that. They have insulin and they lead a completely normal life. So both me and Addie weren't particularly, obviously we're shocked, but we weren't overly concerned. But it was only then when we read up about infantile spasms and how catastrophic it is to their development and the future and their life. And that actually getting that seizure control is paramount to getting the best life for the future. That was, at that point, that was really, it really hit home, and it wasn't good.
Now there's a comment. There's a comment here coming in from Edinburgh from Veronica Curran, and I think she's really summing up how so many of us feel, which is why thank you again for coming on and telling us your story. And she says this: it's cruel for these parents. They just want their children well, as of course we all do as mums and dads. Majority, if not all, have no other experience of cannabis. It works, or they wouldn't be fighting for it. The children deserve this.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's there are children that are seizure free, but there are many, many others that aren't seizure free, but they have seen a significant reduction, and it's that quality of life. That's for me, that's a fundamental. Yes, seizure control is very important, but
so one thing you said, Matt, which resonated with me was. You mentioned little things like little smiles and little emotions when he was on the cannabis medication as compared to when he was on the pharmaceuticals, where he was zombified. And you also talked about bounce back time. Now, both of those things really resonated with me, because I'm thinking you have a child who's suffering, or when he's not suffering, he's comatose and completely out of it. Or you have a child who's suffering, when he's not suffering, he's okay. As in, which one would you choose? Either way, he's going to suffer, but would you rather he would, in those moments post-suffering, would you rather he was asleep, or would you rather he was back to normal? And if that's what you get, if that's what cannabis can give him, it gives him normality in the times when he's not spasming, when he's not flaring.
When he was taken into nursery, he was, as you say, comatose, the drugs that he was on. So the initial treatment was a drug called vigabatrin, and there's a steroid as well called prednisolone. The steroid was at 10 weeks old, the steroid was at adult dosage. So his liver was being, you can't stay.
Oh my God.
So it worked. He was seizure free for 3 months.
Now, you've already said something, Matt, which is resonating straight away. Well, your whole story is resonating. But listen to this. This is coming in from Spain, by the way. So we've gone from Edinburgh to Spain. That's an eye-opener for me, says Chrissy Richards. My son Earl had colic, which is what you were talking about, all the time, and ended up in hospital because he couldn't breathe when he was 2 to 3 years. But they never diagnosed epilepsy, which he had severe bouts when he was 27. So, you've opened our eyes.
Yeah, with infantile spasms, there's a specific EEG that goes with that. So the brainwave pattern, it's called hypsmearrhythmia. So Charlie's brain was in constant chaotic activity. So even if he wasn't seizing, his brain was in constant, he can't learn, he can't, exactly that. So if you look at an EEG, it's very smooth and slow. His was just it's literally like scribbling on a piece of paper, and his was like that constantly.
That's when you lie on a lie detector, as opposed to telling the truth. So, loads of experience at that, because I've been lie detected so many times in my life. But I mean, in the movies when it's that sort of, fine. I get that.
But Ellie was taken into nursery and trying to do everything you do with a normal child. And, he wasn't interacting. It's just the body. It's literally just the body laying there. If he wasn't asleep due to the side effects of the medications, he was seizing. And just constant spasms. So he would have they come in clusters. And as I say, he's having up to 120 seizures a day, sometimes more. And there's just, it wasn't a quality of life. So I know Hannah's mentioned this before as well. You know, you wouldn't put a dog through that. If you had a dog that had a life like that, you'd put them down. And yeah, it's traumatizing. It's just, as a parent, and Charlie's our first as well. You know, Ali was phoning me up in floods of tears, just going, I don't know what to do with him. How do I deal with this? So yeah, it was traumatic. But then as we started using the cannabis, so initially we started using the CBD oil, so it's Haley's Hope, which didn't really have any impact. Then we moved to Charlotte's Web, which is obviously a well-known brand. And the seizure control still wasn't there, but then we started seeing something. All of a sudden these smiles started coming in, as you say, and you know, it was like, there's something in this. We could see a change, and we could see him kind of lighting up. It was almost like someone was lighting a match, and was like, okay, this is good. This, you know, but cautious, you know, very cautious.
You almost start to see the life behind the eyes again, or that little twinkle, or that little something. You're like, oh God, there's something. Yes, it's beautiful.
He's waking up.
Beautiful.
And then, then we got the private prescription in May 2019, and through End Our Pain, the campaign group. And yeah, I was after about 6-7 weeks, and then there's a big notice. All of a sudden, it's like someone switched the light on, and he come alive, which was amazing. It's amazing to see, and yeah, I'm getting emotional. But
so Matt, just take a breather and get your emotions back. But two things really. On a personal level, how are you and your other half able to cope with this as a baby? You know, you're a young parent, it's your first baby, and suddenly all hell breaks loose. You know, your quality of life putting Charlie to one side for a second, just dealing with you and your wife, you must have been in tatters. How were you finding the strength to carry on?
You just do. I don't have an answer for that, to be honest.
Okay.
You just crack on. You literally just.
I get that. I get that. Now, and when you introduce
this zone into this bubble, and you just crack on, and you're just like, right, we're not, you know, we're never going to give up. We never will give up. So you just go into this mode of, let's just get through this. And,
bless you for that. Now, what I didn't quite catch, and I'm sorry because it is so important, is how long before you noticed a difference when you introduced the cannabis? What was the period of time?
It was probably a good 4 or 5 weeks before we really saw a big change. And the initial change, and again, this is quite common, is when the quality of life is starting to wake up, being more aware. He's more aware of his surroundings, and he was giggling and started cooing again, and it's all them things that seem to come first, and then the seizure control started coming, and then the seizures got less and less and less, and the severity was dropping off. And I'll never forget it. There's a particular weekend, and it was a day much like today, to be fair, and yeah, it was a Sunday, and me and Al went out for a walk, and by this it was quite late afternoon, and he hadn't had a single seizure. And I kind of just looked at her with this massive grin on my face, and she kind of looked back and she went, don't jinx it, just don't say anything. And he went the whole day seizure-free. And then the following day he did have seizures, but only very few. So he was only hitting like 5 seizures a day. And I just, it was just, And
if you've just joined, that is 5 seizures per day, down from 120 seizures per day. That is an incredible result.
On average, it was around 20. But yeah, from 120 down to that was...
From 120 down to 5 is miraculous. Miraculous.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Let's go on to that. What product does Charlie take?
So initially, he started on Bedlite and Bedica, which is the product from Holland. So initially, again, this is before the cannabis industry or the medical cannabis industry existed in the UK, really. So Hannah had her NHS prescription. And then us parents were all trying to figure out, okay, right, we needed to understand the pharmacy route, how the import route. So even down to like the type of prescription, because it's a Schedule 2 medicine, the prescription that you need is different to other prescription medicines. So it was a massive learning curve, and we're having to tell the doctors what to do.
Yes, it's hard in the system. There's also a lack of doctors. So, I mean, like this whole route to finding products is, you know, you have to navigate this impossible system to find the right product as well, don't you?
Yeah. Well, we're really lucky to have a doctor that stepped up and, you know, said, I want to do the right thing, which was amazing. And yeah, we then ended up using Bedrolite Medica, but initially it was imported into the UK and we had to get it from Portland Hospital. Now, with all the on costs, it worked out something stupid like £500 a bottle. And we then ended up going to, I can't remember which pharmacy it was. We used a local pharmacy, which reduced the cost, but it's still extortionate, far, far more expensive than what it is at the moment. So we took basically we said, we can't afford this long term, it's not going to happen. So we ended up traveling to Holland and illegally importing 3 months worth of Bedrolite Medica from Holland. And that's when we saw this massive change in Charlie, which again, it was amazing. We then fortunately, we started doing crowdfunding, and we fortunately had a family friend. There's a family that Ali's known since she was a baby, and they're quite well off. And they said, look, we want to support you, we want to support Charlie. So they've been funding his medicine, or half of it, for the past 2 years.
That's so beautiful. I mean, I just wanted to start out there. That is so beautiful. I mean, whoever this mystery family is, God bless you. And if you don't believe in God, may the energies of whatever you do believe in come and give you so many blessings. May your karma balance be so positive, because that's freaking incredible. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
See, one of the themes, Matt, one of the themes that has astounded me, Ollie's very familiar with it, and guests like yourself are familiar with it, is this. There you are, an average family. You're working, and suddenly this horrible thing happens to your little baby. And two things with all your stories run the same, which astound me. One is the cost. As if your life couldn't be tough enough, suddenly the cost goes astronomical, which no one, Jeff Bezos would be thinking, £500 a bottle, are you crazy? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that decent, ordinary people, I'm sorry, it's a real bugbear, Ollie knows where I'm going with this now, have to break the law. Well, you're a law-abiding citizen, and you have to break the law.
He's a teacher.
Well, there you go. I mean, this is precisely Ollie, this is exactly my point. And, again, through you, you've educated me, and it makes me rail against a system where a teacher has to decide to break the law, like suddenly he's Breaking Bad, because he's got to look after his little baby.
It might actually be
shocking.
educational worker. It might not be teacher. It might be educational worker.
It doesn't really matter.
I'm an IT manager in a high school.
Fine. But it's still an educational worker. He's still like you're part
it doesn't matter what it is. He's not a bank robber. He's not a drug dealer. He's a guy just paying his taxes and doing everything else, and has to make a life-changing decision. This is the iniquity of it all. So all power to you, Matt. Your extraordinary story.
Well, it cost us not too much, and unfortunately, there was at that point the medical cannabis industry started to kind of take off, and more oils were being imported. So then there's a product from Israel, from Bowl Pharma, and that was twice the strength of Bedrolite, and it was cheaper. So we could reduce the dose, or reduce the amount of oil. Sorry, so the dose remained the same, but the amount of oil was reduced. And the cost was cheap as well. So we've been on that now for the past year. But that was, again, it was an educated risk in moving from Bedrolite to Silixa.
But since he's been on Silixa, the effects have been as good as when he was on Bedrolite?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's an equally beneficial product.
Yeah, well, the two oils...
That's very good to know. Because I'll tell you what...
The chemical profile of the two oils are very similar. They're not identical, but they are very similar. So again,
are they like 17.5% CBD to 0.3% THC or something like that?
It's actual the whole profile. So the amount of cannabinoids is very similar. There's only two minor cannabinoids difference in between the two. So
very cool. Very, very, very cool. That's good, though. It's good that you found something good. God bless Israel.
Could you can we rewind for a second, Matt? Because there's something else which is a real, again, another bugbear with me, and Ollie has brought it to my attention because this is all down to him and his crusade, which I'm glad to be part of and to enable.
Thank you.
You know that. You went to your GP and you said, which is a story we don't often hear here on the show, that he was very supportive. Because we've heard such a parade of horror stories that have just made me stand here with my jaw hitting my desk. I'm thinking, no, this can't be right. So how come he was supportive? Just that he was a decent man or decent decent person, or what's the story?
If we rewind a little bit, so we went to basically when Charlie was doing really, really well on the Bedlight in Medica. He did have one seizure, and he's with his nan at the time, and she kind of panicked, and he ended up going into the assessment unit. And he's absolutely fine. There was no reason for him to be within the hospital, but it's our first time having him. So at that point, he was so well that we felt as parents we could actually pass him to his grandparents. And and then his pediatric consultant saw him, and he was. You saw it on his face. As soon as he saw him, he started smiling, and you just saw him just go, "Wow!" You could just see it in his eyes. It's like, "Okay, something's going on here. What's going on here?" And we were talking to him for over an hour, and Charlie had no seizures at all. And he was bouncing in the cot, and he was grabbing the tag, and Charlie had never done anything like that. Every time his pediatric consultant saw him, he was having seizures, or he was zoned out completely. So this smile just coming on his face, and he was like, okay. And he said, right, well, we need to show, we need an EEG. We need to show there's a significant reduction in epileptic activity. That EEG was carried out, and the results were a significant reduction in epileptic activity. So we had a corresponding EEG to what we were seeing, within his reduction in seizures. So we then asked them, can we prescribe? And they said we could if we would, but we can't. That was their words. And so I wrote.
What does that even mean? We could if we would, but we can't. So they can and they will, but they won't. That's what they're basically saying.
Well, no, I think they would, but they can't. But again, this is where clinicians can hide behind the whole bureaucracy and all the red tape that's around cannabis. So basically, I wrote to the trust, basically saying, why can't they prescribe? And the trust came back to us. This is Adam Brooks. And they came back to us basically saying the NICE guidelines are preventing us from prescribing. I was then, right, this isn't good enough. The change in Charlie is immense. We want this medication.
It's significant.
So it's a weird story, but basically we started a legal challenge. And Hannah Deacon, through her channels, had met up, or she was doing a drug science event, and she met up with this QC. And then through a different channel, we've got some friends in the legal world. We wrote to them, and they started putting the feelers out, and we got in contact with the same QC. And then that's kind of how we teamed up. And also we knew Hannah through End Our Pain and everything else. So we mounted a legal challenge. We had a really good legal team behind us, QC, and we took NICE to court. And the idea behind that was to review the guidance. That was the aim of the challenge, was to overturn the current guidance and have it rewritten, reviews, looking at real world evidence. Sadly, the evidence that we could get together, and obviously Professor Nutt helped, and Professor Mike Barnes as well, but the legal team felt it just wasn't strong enough to be able to win that within the court. What we did achieve is a clarification to prescribing. So NICE did agree that in individuals, so the guidance is population-wide. Now, our agreement to them was, well, Charlie isn't population, he's an individual. You need to be looking at him and these other children that are seeing benefit. And they agreed. They said, yeah. So they changed, and again, that's looking at real-world evidence. So they changed it, they added the clarification, which is a legal part of the guidance, to basically say that clinicians are to look at that individual and weigh up the benefit versus risk of that, of that product in that particular child. Now, sadly, that hasn't helped because of all the other bits that are in place. So we now have ResCAS within the NHS, which is the Refractory Epilepsy Specialist Advisory Service. Now that came about from us parents going in February in 2019 and campaigning, and we met with Matt Hancock, and he asked for a review into the barriers. And the results from that review, there's quite a few, but one of them was this new refractory epileptic, advisory service, where us parents can refer our children and they can make the decisions on cannabis. Now, to date, there's only been one recommendation for cannabis through that panel. Everyone else, and there's 6 families within MedCan, have all been denied on the and Charlie, so we've been through it as well, and they denied him based on efficacy and safety. Now, Charlie's been using cannabis for 2 years. We know it's safe. We know it's effective. But yeah, they wouldn't touch it. So with regards to the GP, during the legal challenge, we tried to mimic what Hannah Deacon had done with and Mike Barnes, with Alfie. So we're like, right, let's try that route. Let's just test it. So our private clinician, neurologist, she agreed, let's do a shared care plan with our GP. All the GPs, there's a group of them locally, they're all on board. They're just like, yeah, let's do this. They had no hesitation whatsoever. They'd seen what it done to Charlie and the benefit, and they're like, yeah, let's go for it. So we applied for funding, but that funding was denied because epilepsy comes under the NHS. I won't go into the whole legal part of it, but basically that CCG, or our local CCG, refused funding, and it comes under the NHS. So we weren't able to do it.
Let me ask a couple of questions, if I could.
Can I just say one thing quickly, Ross, before you say that? You are such a warrior, though, for going on that journey. I mean, I was sitting there, I'm thinking, this guy's incredible. I mean, literally, I've been complimenting a lot of mothers over the last few weeks for saying you are an incredible mum. Your kid is so lucky to have a mum like you. Your kid is so lucky to have a dad like you. And Ali, I'm sure she's freaking awesome as well. Your kid is so lucky to have you guys as parents. I say this, I know I'm repeating myself. I'm not short of words. It's just every so often, similar people deserve similar compliments, and you just deserve to hear it. You're an awesome dad. And I just want you to know that. It's very important.
Absolutely. I'm going to catch up on a couple of comments, and I've got to ask you a few questions. Anna Barbosa Lugo. Is it Lugo or Lugo? I've broken my reading glasses, everyone. I'm doing my best. Says amen. So let's dash back to Spain. Chrissy Richards, this is something that the governments should be putting money into and make it legal instead of the stupid things they put money into. That's Chrissy's opinion. And Ollie, this is for you. And Mr. Sinner, if you could put this up, because I want to embarrass him. Ollie is amazing for doing this program. I love him.
Oh,
there you go.
So
if things don't work out
Chrissy.
in London, you got a ready-made farm in Spain you can disappear to. Ollie,
let's go and grow some.
Oh, no, she's got a farm. I mean, this is it. I've seen pictures of it. It's enormous and in the middle of nowhere. Matt, let me ask you this: when you had the QC and everybody like that, who? Forgive me, I'm just curious. Who was funding that when you decided to take on NICE? Because the QCs, of course, are a fortune.
It was crowdfunding, and then there was a help from a third party, but unfortunately they pulled out. Again, the risk, the funding risk to them was too much, so they pulled out. So me and Ali had to make the decision of basically, we spoke with the lawyers, and Hannah was heavily involved as well. And we basically said, look, if we weren't to win this and NICE were trying to get their funding back, they're trying to pull back, funding from us trying to pay private prescription and all the rest of it. So we just basically hoped that wouldn't happen. Unfortunately, we ended up with legal aid as well. So initially, it was a massive risk, and we took that financial risk with us. The legal team were pro bono, so they done absolutely everything. And this was over a year of working together to bring this all together. So, and they were amazing, and the amount of work, the hours that they put in, and yeah, it was completely free. We didn't pay a penny.
Let me just say this: I want to put a perspective on that for everybody. If you've never had to employ a QC, Queen's Counsel. So you have barristers, and then you have a QC, and then you have judges, etc. They run at about £800 an hour plus. So you're absolutely north of 800
Or
pounds
a
an hour.
really rubbish one.
And
As in,
that's-
like, for the worst QC
well,
on the planet. Okay,
Careful,
you
because
want
they're QCs. I don't want to get sued. But
No, but you want a great
you're probably
QC,
talking
it's
about
costing
a
you
grand.
back.
You're probably talking about $1,000 an hour for a QC plus. So this is when Matt says they did it pro bono, free. That is some gift. That is some amazing gesture.
The team is still working with other parents and doing their bit, behind the scenes as well. So they're still working away, trying to help us, basically.
Matt, I want to discuss this with you a little bit because there are some problems with this system. And, it's all part of my notes. It's one of the things I want to kind of drop. I think it really comes down to like a UK supply chain. That's where that's where my head constantly goes. Because this whole point is, as patients in the UK, we're very reliant on companies around the world for the different medicines which everyone takes. Now, the problem is everything when it's imported, everything when it's grown somewhere else, and everything when it's brought to a different country in very, very, very small volumes has an extremely large price tag on it. It's just what happens with small volume exports. Now, as a parent who's been through the system and a parent who's been through the wars, you're not someone new who wants something. You're someone who's tried every single angle. Close your eyes, ideal world scenario for other epileptic parents and other epileptic patients. Like, what do you think? Like a farm in the UK growing specific strains for epileptic children, or do you think about maybe even going deeper and creating sister companies with these farms around the world, but based in the UK to guarantee a local supply chain? As in, like what would be your dream scenario? It's just going a bit more.
Definitely the UK. We definitely need a UK growth, 100%. More R&D, research and development into epileptic children and cannabis.
Do you think maybe the doctors, if it was a UK grow and it was UK-based cannabis pharmaceuticals almost, do you reckon the doctors would be more supportive of it? As opposed to, do you understand what I mean?
Already though. There are UK firms, pharmaceuticals, importing flower, because obviously they're not growing here, and producing cannabis oils. So that is already happening.
No, I'm talking about actually producing here. So do you reckon if there was a farm in the UK producing cannabis medication for epileptic kids, it would make doctors wake up a little bit? So not a GW who produces all their product and exports it all. Talk about an actual farm for the people, by the people, like working alongside doctors almost to kind of just make it more on their doorstep. The whole point, if something's so far away and so difficult to get hold of, like imagine McDonald's was only in South Africa. I mean, you're not going to plan a trip to go and get McDonald's. Do you understand what I mean? Now, and you understand. So is there any way that maybe having it on our doorstep or something that would trigger a bigger change? Because
I think at the minute, clinicians generally, especially within the NHS, cannabis isn't a medicine. They're not seeing it as a medicine, and they don't give it the respect as they do other pharmaceutical medicines.
Why?
I think partly because of this randomized controlled trials thing. They're brought up, not brought up, but they're trained, that all medicines go through randomized controlled trials. Now, we know there's around 70 that haven't, but it's that kind of ethos or that mindset to say there isn't enough evidence because it hasn't been through these blind placebo trials. There's then also got the fact that at the moment, the medications or the prescribed medications, we just don't know enough about the actual product. So I think that's something that the Cannabis Industry Council are working towards, and MedCan and PLE and loads of other organisations, MCCS, is that to improve the knowledge. So if the clinicians will know more about the product. So we know not just about CBD and THC, we know what the carrier is, we know what the phytocannabinoids are, we know what the terpenes are. And then that gives the clinicians much more information, and they can make better prescribing decisions. And
but this is an ongoing problem because, like you said, at the moment, everything is imported. So when you said, me and Matt had a conversation 3 days ago. He hasn't said it on this call, okay, so no one's missed this. When me and Matt spoke 3 days ago, we're talking about him getting his prescription for Charlie through his doctor, through these international companies. He never gets a certificate of analysis. Okay, so he actually has no idea what's in his product. How are doctors ever going to learn what's, it's almost like the pyramid's got to start at the bottom. You know what I mean? The patient's at the top of the pyramid. The foundation of the pyramid is a UK-based supply system, and all the information can then feed up to the patient. When you've got your foundation based on another country where they're not legally permitted to share information with you, patients are left in the dark, and clinicians who are prescribing this are also left in the dark. They're educationally unaware of what's actually in their bottles.
Well, this is what Professor Mike was saying. And I rarely disagree with Ollie, but and I'm sorry about the noise because I've got a whacking great industrial fan on, because otherwise I'm going to be melting. Is this? I think with all these education process, it has to cascade from the top as opposed to come from the bottom, because clearly that is not working as a matrix. It has to cascade from the top and filter down. And this is for you, Matt, from Rachel Rankmore. Big kisses, Matt. Ali and Charlie, you are one amazing family. And Veronica Curran up in Edinburgh, these mums and dads are just beyond words. Huge respect for each and every one of you, warriors each, Matt, Karen, Vera and Hannah, and many others. Absolutely so. Absolutely so. You know, lots of love coming towards you. I hope that I know with what you've gone through, you might say, well, so what? But just know there is a lot of love and a lot of respect for you.
Thank you. Cheers, guys. But yeah, no, you're right. This is where the UK industry needs to pull together. So this isn't just about children, adults. Adults that are prescribed flour, they don't get a certificate of analysis either. So it's something that is fundamental. And again, with Charlie, so if he is going through a rough period, or he gained weight, so obviously he's growing and he has his growth spurts. We want to adjust that cannabis, but we need to know what I'm adjusting. So although the bottle says it has 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams of CBD and X amount THC, I know that there's a variance every batch, and I know that in Israel it's a 20%, whereas in Holland it's 10%. So this is where the UK, and again, this is fundamentally where I feel the Cannabis Industry Council that Mike set up is crucial in bringing everyone together and working to, bring standards up. And I hope that when the standards reach a point where we have so much more information and informed choice on the medications, and even have studies going forward to maybe say that these particular chemovar profiles are most effective in anxiety or depression or epilepsy, whatever, that then obviously you then have evidence-based prescribing. So at the minute it's predominantly commercial-based prescribing. It just shouldn't be like that. It should be based. So there's many families that will spend thousands of pounds and not see any benefits because they haven't been given the right chemovar profile. So that, obviously with cannabis, there is an element of guessing at the moment, but
there's also a lot of analysis. Analysis can come into this, maybe less with epilepsy, and I'm saying even like with all product creation, with all cannabidology, it's about understanding, like you said, these terpenes, these lipids, these fats, the other cannabinoids, their ratios and how they'll coincide with each other, all the other minor cannabinoids which might appear even in minuscule amounts, which you can see, but they don't mention because they're not countable, but they are there. You still need to know this information because it's that, you could call it that sum of all of those figures. The sum of all cannabinoids is what Charlie's medicine is. It's not the cannabinoids which they count. And I was actually, remember when we spoke, I kind of lost my shit a little bit because I was like, wait, what do you mean? I've literally based my entire business in this industry and my entire journey in this industry on developing mathematically accurate products, to the point where my businessmen, my business buddies, my business partners, that's the word, literally leave the room when I talk about mathematical accuracy because I've driven them so mental. And it's all this idea of drop tectonics, understanding exactly what's in a drop, because you've got accuracy equals reliability equals consistency, which then gives the end user accountability and traceability in the product and transparency in the product which they're consuming, and it gives them reliability as well. And it's kind of this, I can't really believe that the medical cannabis industry has so many leniencies which don't apply anywhere else in any other cannabis sector. And it just kind of it really shocked me when we spoke.
Again, it comes down to MHRA regulation, and because they're specials. But again, we've also got another problem in that because they're a Schedule 2 medicine, there are no labs. So with CBD labs, you don't need a license. But
You're in one. Boom. CBD lab. CBD lab. Sorry.
But we could send you an oil and you could test it. But
I don't actually have testing machinery, but I could smell it and try and replicate it. And
that's another fundamental issue, is that pharmacies that are importing these oils, they've got nowhere to send them, so they have to rely on the licensed producer. And they do have a certificate of analysis to get the MHRA authorization, but that isn't then passed to the clinicians or the patients. And because
plant extracts are always changing. It's a little bit like when it's a little bit like mining. You go and you mine gold from the ground. You're not pulling up 99.9% pure gold. You're putting up gold inside of other rocks, and every rock will have a different concentration of gold in it. It's the same thing with cannabis oil. You take a whole bunch of oil, you take it out of a plant, and even two plants which grow side by side, one's going to be 17.3, one's going to be 17.25. Why? Because they're different plants. It's the same way that two twins who are identical still have a different fingerprint, because genetically they can never be exactly the same. And this is very important for people to understand this. It's almost part of that foundational understanding of cannabis. And like I said to you yesterday on the phone, I might actually get quite angry if we end up talking about this, because I can't believe they're even letting parents like you guys who are not cannabis experts, you're epilepsy experts and you're incredible parents. This is not an education that you need to learn. This is not something that you should have to realize that they're not telling you. They should tell you, by the way, guys, just to let you know, full plant cannabis extracts are not mathematically accurate. And we cannot make them mathematically accurate, and we will not give you 10% more when your product is 10% less, and we will not inform you of it. They should at least tell you that, so you know that you're getting an unregulated, inconsistent product, and therefore you know where you stand with it. If they just leave you in the dark, the same way that with paracetamol, imagine they didn't put a number on the front and every time you took a pill it was a different effect. It's not fair to do that to the end user. It's not fair to do that to the patient. If anything, it's dangerous.
You take Transvel pharmacy. So the thing we don't want to do is start going down the isolate route. So yes, isolates have their place, but more and more evidence is starting to show that full extracts are more beneficial.
True. But then on the other side, using the correctly extracted, this is another thing, it's all about correct extraction. Now, if I was to have correctly extracted isolates, which constitute every single component in your plant, I can mathematically recreate it and it will be as good, if not better. Or what happens is you take a sub strain of like a CBD FICO and then you build on top of it. So what happens is you take a strain and you can work around it. And the problem is you need the analysis. You need the analysis of what the original starting sum of all cannabinoids is in order to replicate it using isolates, as opposed to just going out there and creating isolate-based concoctions. It's about a replication, not innovation. And if you do replicate, it actually does work. I've done it for myself. I live on a full spectrum pace. I don't do it for epilepsy. I do it for Tourette syndrome. But sometimes it comes with an 8%. Sometimes it comes with a 12. Sometimes it comes with a 16. And I know I need 17.5. I also know I need little bits of CBG, little bits of CBN, a tiny bit of CBC, sometimes some other cannabinoids. And if they're not there, I can build it up for myself. And no one's thinking this way, which is the biggest problem. Everyone says isolates are bad. And yes, isolates are bad because people look at a full spectrum and then they look at an isolate and they try and compare them, as opposed to seeing a full spectrum as the house and isolates as building blocks to rebuild that house in exactly the same way.
Well, I think this is a fundamental problem with what's happening within the NHS. So next year, the trials start. So we're going to have a CBD isolate group, and we're going to have a CBD and a THC isolate mixed at a set ratio. Now, we already know
it's not enough still. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. I agree with you, but there is a right way to do it. It's not full spectrum versus isolates. It's full spectrum extracted properly versus isolates constructed properly. And if things are done properly, then most of the time things are okay, but nothing's being done properly.
Again, this is where we just need more information. So at the moment, we've got full normal, extraction, and we need that information to make more informed choices and to move the industry forward.
I wasn't attacking you, by the way. There, I'm
yeah,
pissed
yeah.
off at the
Let
industry.
me jump in here.
Pissed off at the industry.
Let me jump in here. On behalf of consumers and customers. And over the 43 weeks, Ollie and I have become good buddies. And
He's all right.
I'm not just saying this because the show is sponsored by the Tincture Club and it was Ollie's idea that he came to us with it. It's this. I've never known anybody take so much care and attention in creating the correct product for the individual. And that is something that I think a lot of people, and I was the front of the queue of not understanding this. You go into, I'm just going to say, Holland and Barrett or Boots or something, and it's there and it's on the shelf, but it's a one-all catch-all, which I get. It's like getting paracetamol or aspirin or Nurofen. You know, it's going to be the same thing. And Ollie has educated me in the way, the minute detail that he goes into. And I know a lot of people, I've been saying, with bad backs, which I've got at the moment, or bad sleeping, or whatever it is, I said, speak to Ollie and tell him the situation.
Did the products? Did the
Yeah.
products help?
Yeah. I mean,
Also-
Ollie sent me drops, and he sent me like something balm to put on my back. And I have to say, yes, indeed. That
But
it's helped.
epilepsy
I
is
can't make that up. If it hadn't helped, I would have said,
But epilepsy is different, and we have to like.
No,
like
I totally
Hannah Deacon
understand
said,
that.
Epilepsy is life or death, and
Of
pain
course
is
it is.
pain.
Of course
And
it is.
I don't
And-
want Matt to try and think that I'm this magician. I'm just trying to
No.
keep the conversation interesting.
No, absolutely. And I'm not taking it away from, my lousy back from a car crash and Matt's little boy's problems are a million miles apart. Obviously they are. But what I'm trying to say to you is if you're thinking about it, have a conversation with Ollie first. That's the thing to do. And then try it. If you don't want to try it, don't try it. We're not pushing it one way or the other. But I just wanted to say that I'm stunned by the level of care and professionalism that goes into it. There we are. That's enough. That's my speech.
It's all trial and error. So, Matt, give me a bit of favour. We've got 5 minutes left, 3.5 minutes left. Tell us a little bit about MedCan and about what you guys do. And I know we're going to bring you back on to talk more about this, but if you can just shoot.
So basically, if we go back to the beginning, so myself and Hannah, we were all parents basically, we were researching cannabis and how it helps epilepsy and trying to understand the endocannabinoid system. And as time's gone on, we get more and more parents contacting us, asking a range of questions. So MedCan kind of just was an idea to have a central hub for support and information. So we'd then have, documents about different oils and the endocannabinoid system. We then built the website and put that together. But it's then kind of evolved to be more supportive. So it's just a hub for all these parents to ask all these questions and about interactions, about epilepsy, about, there's just all sorts of questions. But it's there to be a support for parents. Basically what we were missing, and to have a central hub for research as well. And to be able to, so during COVID, the first lockdown, we reached out to clinicians in Canada and California, so Dr. Bonnie Goldstein and Dr. Evan Lewis. And we done webinars and we got parents involved and, listening to the doctors, and the doctors had PowerPoint presentations and they're all on the website. So if anyone wants to kind of have a look, we had about 10 in the past year, all that information's on there. And then we teamed up with MCCS and we've done several webinars. And it's just about bringing that information to the forefront and to the parents and to make,
Could you
make
give us
more
the
information.
website address, Matt, if you know it? Do you know the website address?
www.medcansupport.co.uk.
But MedCan's also, back onto my rant, looking at creating more transparency behind the oils which patients are taking, right? And that's also something you're looking into.
Yep. So we are, MedCan Support is a part of the Cannabis Industry Council as our plea, and we're the two patient voices. I think CanCard are in there as well. I was actually voted the patient's chair to sit on the executive board earlier this week, which I'm really excited about.
Mazel tov.
So it's about all of us as an industry working together to, bring change, to work with the licensed producers, the pharmacies, the legal side of things, with the clinicians, and improving this. Basically, let's get let's bring the industry forward. And then when the UK industry starts growing, and we can have everything there ready for the patients to get the best for them.
You're incredible, man. I just love the fact that you're just going that extra mile so people don't have to suffer the way you suffered. And the fact that, like we always talk about Hannah, she's incredible, because Hannah could retire and not have to worry. The fact that she's still fighting for people.
Right.
You've got an incredible team around you. You've got some incredible brains around you, and you really have some beautiful emotion.
Yet again, Ollie, you've brought us the most amazing guest, Matt Hughes. We wish you, we wish Ali, but most of all we wish Charlie all the very best. This is the ABC of CBD. It's exclusive to Men's Radio. Ollie, as ever, you are a freaking legend. Thank you for bringing these wonderful people to us. Same time next week. Until then, stay safe.
You're awesome.